Will's got the right button now.
That's what she said.
Anyway, hey everyone, welcome to the Jabbering Jawas with your host Joey Clark and
Will, the Thrill, Stafford.
as we also like to call ourselves around here, Joey One Kenobi and Will Sith. Hopefully all of you are having a wonderful day today. We are recording on the day that would have been the final day of San Diego Comic-Con, but unfortunately due to the asshole formerly known as COVID, or known as COVID, yeah, San Diego Comic-Con ain't really happening.
You're trying to do it online.
It wasn't that great, we'll just be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to
And because I already swore, for any young Padawans out there listening under the age of 18, please be advised that you will hear such words going forward. So, you got a little bit of a warning. I'm not liable for anything that you do whatsoever. Ever.
Eventually, we're going to get that down and put the warning before we start saying fucking all that shit. But now
I just an asshole. Small.
Let's say that on PG-13 movies. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of the body. It's normal.
Yeah, there you go. Anatomy. We're teaching anatomy. You're welcome.
Yeah. Next week, the dick. And then the vet. No.
We already talked about that in the previous episode. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I'm still dealing with that shit, by the way. I'm the prototype Vader because I have a fucking catheter still. But hopefully it'll be out in 2 days and I won't look all funky and wearing the... Oh, and people, if you've noticed or cared, just as an Easter egg, I've been wearing this shirt probably a few episodes because I've been trying to wear comfortable clothing while recovering from surgery. And the only one of few Star Wars shirts that is comfortable is my Ahsoka Vader shirt.
Hey,
so,
man, it's quarantine, you know?
Yeah. And
everybody knows. Everybody's being comfortable right now. I haven't even worn this jacket in like years. It's comfy as shit though.
All you gotta do during quarantine is just be comfortable.
True. All right. So if y'all are here, you read the title on whatever this is, you know we're going to talk about Solo, which is a interesting movie, to say the least, in the Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. But a couple things I will very bad cringeworthy humor there. Kind of want to go into it a little bit since San Diego Comic-Con did happen and there is one very sad news drop. Is the sad fact that, and I think we were all expecting this, Star Wars films release dates have been moved back by a year. Mm-hmm. And I will say, not only is it disappointing because it's like, I really want a Star Wars film, it's just disappointing that we have to deal with James Cameron's Avatar sequel before we get to have a Star Wars film, and I am super sad about that.
I mean,
what's your feelings, man?
In their defense, if they, you know, I don't know if there's like an Avatar fan base, and I mean the blue people, not the actual good stuff, but I don't know. There's like a, you know, blue Avatar fan base, but they did have to wait like what, 10 years? So I guess now we also had to wait pretty long though for the new ones. So I don't know.
Yeah, and the new release dates are as follows. Untitled Star Wars, December 22nd, 2023.
Damn.
Then after 2 years later, December 19th, 2025. And then after that, December 17th, 2027. So it's going to be over 3 years to the next Star Wars film. And I have no fucking clue what it's going to be about, because I don't know if they're going to wait until next year at Celebration to tell us, since Star Wars Celebration was supposed to be this year, and I was If COVID didn't happen, thank you again, you fucking virus. Um, if they were going to tell us this year so we could get excited about it, but maybe they're waiting. I really don't know. We know that the Bad Batch is coming out, and that's the weird thing about this is that animation can still happen because animation is primarily done on computers, and writers' rooms can meet via Zoom, and like even like how The Simpsons and Family Guy announced and the whole Fox animation slate, they're still working on their shows from home because it's animation. You can't really do that with live action. So I'm like,
Which is
eh,
it's even weirder, right? Because they've been having all these. Since we're talking about Solo, I guess it ties in. They talk about like the possible Lando series. Didn't see anybody like too big talking about that, so I don't know about the truth of that. But they can't even work on it right now, so it's like, you know what? Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do with all these live actions right now. Obviously, they already have like season 2 of The Mandalorian and everything, but I don't know. Let's see what they do over these
yeah,
next few years because I don't know.
it's really weird because I mean, as far as the US goes, because I think all of the Mandalorian for the most part was shot in the US because they had those big giant
Studio.
screens or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know that initially the mandate was lifted that they could resume production for certain things June 12th, so last month, but I know that California is kind of back under lockdown, so it's kind of like, so does that mean production stopped again? Um, so I'm kind of wondering if they're gonna just end up moving or having some kind of setup in another country possibly to do that type of stuff so they can resume production and not be held back on that front.
I can see them doing that.
Which makes me wonder if this technology will be used for future films because I feel like it worked really well in The Mandalorian, but is it good enough, you know, to replace physical sets for a big major motion picture because The Mandalorian's such an intimate thing? I mean,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think like maybe a smaller budget Star Wars film might try doing something with that?
Yeah, man, we talked about like there's certain directors that could do like a smaller budget one, so it's definitely possible. I will say the Star Wars does have the, I guess, luxury you say of not being on Earth. You know what I mean? So they don't necessarily need like it's not like they have the Venom 2 movie like shit like that coming out where it's like, oh, it's in San Francisco or it's in New York or in LA. They don't need sets like that. So I mean, I guess they could spend a little bit more time, money, like building even more of a set possibly, but I don't know if they do that. Like go somewhere like where COVID's not as prevalent, build a studio there and just build their own sets of like star destroyers and the planet or whatever. I don't know, but I say they're in a situation where it's possible they could, I guess. And I mean they have the money and the resources, so they probably would be able to. But yeah, that my only thing in but like the live action movies in general is uh, somebody gets the virus or something, then like what's the protocol? What happens if they got to like I feel like either way we're just seeing productions that probably not going to be it's not going to be easy, of course, but we might see more and more delays until this shit is like actually nipped in the bud, like because you have your main actor get COVID or something, like, then what do you do?
To me, yeah, I'm sorry that we're taking such long pauses here, folks, because I mean, we're recording this as this is happening. It's kind of one of those weird things where you really have to wonder what the hell is going to happen moving forward, especially with a franchise as big as Star Wars, because it's like and I've said this on here many, many times, is Star Wars is first and foremost a film franchise. As cool or as much as we might love like The Mandalorian or the animated shows, because I'm definitely a big fan of both of them. I want a fucking Star Wars film. And the thing that worries me is that I'm glad that they're taking time, but it'll be 4 years of waiting for the next Star Wars film since the last one. And as you know, Will and I really don't give two shits about really that last trilogy at all. And it makes me wonder, are they going to set up another trilogy because they slated three movies? Is it three separate adventures? Is it a mix of both where two of them are part of a trilogy and one is its own thing? I don't really know. And it's really hard for me to want to be excited for a Star Wars film because two out of the five movies we've gotten, I feel, have been good and worth the excitement. But Last Jedi,
2.5.
Rise of Skywalker, I got super hyped and super excited, but I was let down majorly both times. And
Mm-hmm.
Solo, I never really wanted and never really cared for the trailers and was like, never thought it'd be that great. And we're going to talk about it later today. So I'm like, do you? I mean, we both love Star Wars and we both want it to be good, but what would it take for you to be excited about the next one and really just be like,
And
okay,
I mean, straight up, like, give me some old Republic movies. Don't do too much. Like, it's already a great stories. Like, there's so much there. Just take those, especially like Revan or something. Like, this is where like fan service is just like works in your favor. It's like you put Revan in the movie, you choose a great actor to be them, choose a good director to do like if they do a trilogy, a good director to do like all the movies. Because obviously what they did this last time didn't work doing different directors. So it's like get a my mom just texted me she's watching Solo. That's funny. Uh, but yeah, just get a good director to do like all three movies, and by the time they come out, who knows who that might be? There might be some like new director come up, and maybe they'll be good for it. Who knows? But like uh, yeah, just take the stories that are already there that people want, and I think that would be enough for me. But it's like it shouldn't be anything that should be ruined if you just adapt like what people already like. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'll be the first to admit and scream at me, guys, all that you want. But I don't know a ton about the Old Republic, but the storylines that I've read up about and heard about, it's super intriguing and it's definitely somewhere where I'd like to see Star Wars go. And the one thing that has annoyed me is that on multiple occasions, Kathleen Kennedy has defended Star Wars by saying, like, we didn't have source material to work with and things of that nature. And I'm just like, do you not know that you had what you made Star Wars Legends? Like, that is material that if you sift through it and cherry pick, which they have done, you have your boy Filoni doing it with Thrawn and some other cool shit.
Yeah.
You could easily adapt those books into a really great film.
You see
Like,
that?
that's source material. Like, how can you say you don't have it? You have a plethora of shit you could go through.
And that's what I don't get. Like, uh, it's crazy to me, right? That they would say that or think that, but they literally have evidence within the stuff that they have made with Clone Wars or Rebels or Rogue One that people like this stuff. So I don't understand, and it does well. So I don't understand what the issue is.
And at one point, they were gonna pull Revan into Clone Wars, and there's a deleted scene out there of it where he was gonna be a part of it. And I think he's technically canon because there's a garrison of Sith troopers in Rise of Skywalker that technically have the Revan name. So
And
I think you do go through that, adapt it, don't insert any political BS, and just give me a good fucking Star Wars movie. And focus on the story of it. Because, and ultimately, Star Wars, they say it's for kids, and that's totally cool. And kids don't need to be worried or troubled by the troubles of the real world.
mhm.
To me, Star Wars has always been a place to escape all of that bullshit. Of
Mhm.
course, you teach, lessons of, good and bad, and maybe, a little bit of gray area, how things can be, perceived. That's totally cool. But ultimately, focus on a good story. That's what I want.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's actually a good place to segue. It's something I was thinking about. And I don't really necessarily put in like the good or bad thing because it could throughout the movie it could get kind of a little annoying. But L3 throughout that movie kind of was doing that thing where it's like liberate the robots and all that. I think it's a good way to kind of insert sort of like a political thing, but then it's like at least within the Star Wars, it's like this robot wants to free other robots, like, and that's something that you can understand in the real world. But if you're a kid, you're just kind of like, oh, that's cool. This robot wants to free other robots, and I mean, yeah, I think that's fine as far as that. Like when I was talking about last week, it'd be weird if they talked about like Black Lives Matter or something like in the middle of Star Wars. Like that'd be weird. That's a good way to fucking like do it without you know being like on the nose or whatever. Like, but kind of talking about that. Like obviously they're rebels or whatever, so that's what we're gonna do. But I will say, because we're starting off with the bad, L3 not my favorite droid. Like I think the voice actor is fine. Like she's good. I like the voice, but L3 as a character, I don't love it. And we were talking about before this started about her being inserted to the ship, and I just had when I got to that part, I didn't remember it from the first time I watched, like in theaters, and I was like, they inserted her into the ship. I was like, wait, because that shit never. It's just one of those things where it's like, but so she's just in the fucking Millennium Falcon. So tell me, has she just been there this whole time, or is she gonna be taken out of it at some point? Like I don't understand. Like and she didn't say anything, so I'm just like, she can't talk anymore, I guess. But she's like in the ship. But there's so many things about that that's just weird. I'm like, why, how, and why? And then Lando just loses the ship anyway. So it's like, I don't know. That was a weird choice. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think we're gonna definitely have some argument on explanations for certain things. But this one, I definitely agree with you. I'm gonna sound like such an asshole right now, but I was actually really happy when she got destroyed. I did not feel 1 ounce of sadness when she got fucked up. I was like, finally, she just shut the fuck up, and I was happy because I will admit a little bit of it. Like when I first got into her character, like I was okay with the little clips with like, equal rights. Like I thought it was a little bit funny.
Mhm.
They beat it over the head where it's like, okay, we know what you're doing. Just fucking stop, please. And they just kept going. And I was like, okay. And then they made that. And the one thing I fucking hate is they made Lando a robot fucker. And it's like nowhere from Empire or Return of the Jedi do you think, man, this guy must love having sex with robots or having sex with whatever he can stick his dick into? No, to me, Lando is just a womanizer. Like, I wish I could have seen him maybe do that. Not saying that I want him to be like a sexist pig, but like,
Yeah,
schmooze
he
somebody.
was never, yeah, he was never that. He's smooth.
Yeah, like I would have liked to seen that. Like maybe at like the sabacc table, like he's just like, "Hey, did you know that I could do this?" Eh,
I, I feel like that was honestly just shoehorned in the movie to give that the robot more purpose. They're like, what else can we do with this robot besides like the fact that he wants to free other robots? Oh, we'll have her and Lando want to get with each other. But yeah, it was just like a random. And even that scene that you talk about where she gets shot, like she got shot because she was literally just sitting there like, yeah, freedom, all this shit. And I'm like, I, I get this like sometimes robots in Star Wars have somewhat of a conscience, I guess, but it's still like a droid. You know what I mean? Like they still think about the mission first, unless she's like so like I don't know, in a way like malfunctioned or like programmed in a way where she's just like, no, I'm completely sentient, and I'm just like, oh wow, well, yeah, why would she just be standing there like, yeah, freedom to robots, and then get shot? You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like droids don't they don't like do things in that way. I guess you can kind of argue that I guess kind of C-3PO does, but that's just the C-3PO's now that he's not a fucking fighting droid, and he's always in these situations where other people are fighting and they drag him into it. But like this droid is obviously programmed for combat and everything, so it's like why would she do that? You know what I mean? And it just seems like another like situation that's like, oh, we put this robot in here because we always put droids in movies and we need it to do something. So it's gonna her and Lando are gonna love each other or something. But she's not in anything else, and we don't really know what else to do with it, so we're gonna kill her, but we need to find a way to kill her. So here's what we're gonna do. And now she's part of the ship, and she doesn't talk anymore. And this isn't gonna come up in anything else in any other series or movie. Like, yeah, it's just such a strange character.
It had my eyes rolling when she was a part of the ship because it's like, okay, I get that she had her navigational charts, and now I guess the Falcon can just do whatever, but it's like, did we really need to know this? Like, that.
I
There's
mean,
so many issues.
you could argue a lot of movie we didn't really need to.
Like, there's so many things where, like, hey, did you want to know how this happened? Not really. Well, we're gonna tell you anyway. And it's like, just a lot of it's just fucking eye rolling, and I don't give two shits about what happens in it.
And
And
actually,
ugh,
we talked about last week. I think, yeah, that was last week about him getting his dice and all that stuff. But actually, I realized there really wasn't any explanation of his dice. They're just there. And
yeah,
also, I think that's something that I wish they would have talked about. It's like, why are those dice so precious to him? And they try to make it like, oh, because he gave them to Kira, and then they reunited. But he already like had them on his like he stole like some ship, and he had the dice in his pocket and put them on there. It's like, okay, maybe they're just like his lucky dice, but I'm like, why does he think that? You know what I mean? I feel like that's something that you would know because he like always has those. And they didn't even like, oh well, he gives them to Kira before they get taken for the part, and then, but like we said before, like Kira's not going to be important later because obviously she's not in his life later. You know what I mean? And yeah, that the whole thing was just kind of they made some weird choices. Like they
yeah.
kind of pick and chose like, okay, we're going to explain this, which isn't really needed, but we're not going to explain this, which isn't really needed, but it's also something that's already been explored or shown, but we're not going to explain this stuff. So yeah, I don't I didn't get that.
Actually, I'll argue back a little bit. I mean, I think Kira actually, to me, I feel like she does serve a purpose because I think it does build into his character why he is the way he is and maybe why he's not so quick to trust love or
Hmm.
have feelings, especially when you see him in A New Hope with like Leia. He's really standoffish
Yeah,
and dickish to her. So I kind of get it. I mean, it helps me understand it a little bit. Did I need to see it? No. It could have been something that kind of just pieced together. Like, there's a lot of things about him.
you know I
Eh.
no sorry that's what you're saying if you
Oh no, you're good. No, you're good.
uh uh but no, I was just saying like I almost wish that they wouldn't have showed us the beginning. Like honestly, the chasing the beginning was kind of cool, that kind of stuff. But I almost wish they wouldn't have showed us that. And then later on, he just meets up with this like random woman that we've never seen, and she's like important to his life. Because I mean, at that point, the movie kind of becomes about him and her, and I understand that it's she is like a big character to him, but it is a Han Solo movie, you know. So I almost wish that they would have kept that part out, and then we meet her, and we start to get these bits and pieces about the past, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
like we have to kind of piece it together. And I thought that would have been cool, other than like, oh well, they were together on that planet, and then they got, and even then you could eliminate that whole how he got his name thing because that wasn't good either. I know you didn't like that.
Oh, you don't have a people? Han Solo. It's like, okay.
He's got from some Imperial guy, like, yeah.
No, it's just, yeah, yeah. And the other thing too, because I had this conversation with my girlfriend recently, is the issue that I've also had with a lot of the new Star Wars films, and Solo even more that I think about it now, is like there's at least usually a full circle purpose or a purpose to the movie. So, for example, Phantom Menace, even though the purpose is like whatever, it's like, okay, we need to get the Trade Federation off of our asses, and okay, they accomplished that. The end. Tackle the clones. They're built. It's like we got to figure out why Padme's being attacked. We do, and we find out that they're building a droid army. So, we got a clone army. Revenge of the Sith. We got to end the war, and then oh shit, we're now the Empire. The New Hope. We need to destroy the Death Star. Destroy the Death Star. Empire Strikes Back. Uh, well, we got to get Han away from the bounty hunter and hopefully get the
It's a come of
and then Return of the Jedi. It's defeat the Empire. There's a purpose to each of those 6 films.
for the Death Star.
And then it's like the reason I kind of like Force Awakens, the whole purpose is to find Luke Skywalker for like the first 2/3, and then, hey, we need nostalgia, so here's a big ass Death Star that all of a sudden we need to destroy, which made no fucking sense.
Yeah.
It had just been going to find Luke. And then 8, okay, we don't really know what we're doing. And then 9, let's see if we can find purpose, and there's no purpose. And then Rogue One, it's Rogue One is
Start
just
playing.
having her find her identity and help in finishing her father's mission to help the rebellion destroy the Death Star. I think that's why that story is good and why it's liked by new and old fans, because
Yeah.
there's a purpose to it. Solo, there's nothing really there. There's kind of a love story. There's kind of him finding himself, kinda, but eh,
It's one of those movies that they use, and this is like it, I blame Marvel. It's one of those movies that they use to like introduce other characters or other ideas for like other movies or shows. That's pretty much the purpose of it. Like, I realized when I watched this again and I got to the end, I'm like, damn, they just really, really wanted to introduce Crimson Dawn and Darth Maul, which is fine because I know there's a lot of people who didn't watch the animated shows and they didn't realize that Darth Maul was still alive, so that's fine. But the debate, I feel like they had 2 plans. They're like, we kind of want to make a Han Solo movie, and then we kind of want to make something with Darth Maul and Crimson Dawn. Like, how do we do that? And they just kind of went like, oh, I got it. Han Solo movie and put Darth Maul. Yeah, I just feel like they just kind of filled in the blanks in between. But yeah, there's no real purpose, and it's like, oh, this is how Han and Chewbacca met. By the way, how do you feel about how they met?
you know, that I honestly don't mind it. It's one of the few parts in the movie that I actually enjoy quite a bit. And I think it has like pretty decent Star Wars humor with those two stormtroopers. Like, that's a really good chunk of the movie. But again, it's one of those things that I have a lot of issues with the new ones where it's like there's some really good moments in all of the movies, but
Yeah.
there's not a lot that connects those good moments for me to give a shit.
Y-
Like, it's a good like clip scene,
Yeah,
but
I agree. No, I totally agree. I really like that sequence when they throw him into the prison, they meet Chewbacca, and all the hilarity ensues. But the thing I noticed about this movie a lot of times is like they honestly have like really genuinely good scenes, and I'm like, damn, I like that. And they're like, oh, that was funny, and then it's immediately followed by something that's just like it's just like okay, like all right, I guess. Uh, like what's a good example? There's the scene with like when Han and wins. Well, he doesn't win. Sorry, he loses to Lando the first time they play Sabak,
yeah,
and then they're trying to escape the planet. They're being chased by the all uh, the Tie fighters and shit,
yeah,
and it's honestly pretty cool. Like them getting away, like doing all these like cool things, and he's like doing his pilot shit,
yeah,
and they kind of go into that place with the big octopus thing. And
yeah.
oh man, well, and it really all the whole scene just made me think of the underwater scene for fucking Phantom Menace,
Oh, there's
where
all bigger fish.
yeah, where like the purpose of it was kind of like it was fine. You're showing us like big things in the ocean, I guess, but it's kind of like they just did something real quick, got away. It was like whatever. And I know they're trying to like be like the scene in the original movies where they're inside the actual like giant thing in the fucking like moon or rock or whatever, but it didn't hit the same for me, especially when all he really did was like, I'm gonna fly towards this giant hole, and then I'm gonna shoot off a pod, and then like it's just gonna chase that, and it started going through the hole, and like it, that I feel like the scene had potential, but then it just ends like very like on a low note. But when he, but then he like did the height, like the thing where they injected the coaxium
Yeah,
into it, and then like hyperspace away, and that was cool. And it's like, yeah, the movie's like this. It just keeps going like, oh, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then and it's like it's the most confusing shit. And I think that's why I always say like it was decent, it was okay, because there's like genuinely good parts and then genuinely not good parts.
yeah. Going off of that, the whole here's what the Kessel Run was. I was expecting a lot more.
Mm.
And then I remember the one thing that just had me rolling my eyes is when he gets off the ship and then he tells, I forgot who, but he's like, yep, just did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Like,
Yeah, somebody just like says that to him. I forgot who it was too. Honestly, I just watched. But yeah, that is weird. I'm like, and like
okay, like we know what you just did.
every time I heard the Castle Run when I was younger, I thought it was like a race of some kind. That's what I
That,
thought it was.
that too.
And then especially when we get shit like pod racing in Phantom Menace, and then in KOTOR there's like the swoop bike racing, and it's like racing even like with ships and everything has always been just like a really big thing
Yeah,
in Star Wars. Like it's always been there. So I thought the Kessel Run was like, oh, he did like some like crazy like fucking like galactic like obstacle course race that like nobody else could do, and he did it faster and better.
yeah,
But it was like that sequence, and I was like, wait, that was. I mean, because I knew they were going to Kessel, so I was like, oh, they're gonna do it right now after they get this shit, okay? And
yeah,
yeah, I agree. It was just it's very weird that that was the Kessel run. And I'm like, okay,
yeah. I was expecting it to be kind of like that TIE fighter part. Like, I really like that one TIE fighter part where, like, he's skidding along like to fuck up the TIE fighters. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I like that more than the Kessel Run because it
yeah,
was like he was doing really cool shit to me, and like we already know he's not gonna die in the thing. So it's like to me, you kind of really need to up the ante of what is cool that he can do with that shit.
yeah,
Like Rise of Skywalker, I really don't give a shit about, but I was expecting something like light speed skipping, how they were like doing
yeah,
shit
yeah,
like that. Like that would have made more sense as the Kessel Run to me.
yeah. Or and I mean that when he went into hyperspace before that thing closed on him, it was cool. But bringing that up, you have stuff like Last Jedi where they had like the holdover maneuver. It
Yeah,
wasn't quite as impressive as that. So like, yeah, that's the only thing about the movie. It's just like it was like real high and then like real low. Sometimes you're like, oh, but the shit that they did earlier was cooler than that you're doing now. Um, and that I will say one other thing about well, not sorry, this is something really different. Just the movie in general. I don't love the color palette, and this is kind of just a thing in general with like some of these new Star Wars movies. I don't know what it is about the fucking color palette, but they really love fucking like neutral shit. And I feel like especially a solo movie, I can almost understand Last Jedi and like not really Rise of Skywalker, but I just feel like a solo movie should have been more vibrant and colorful. You know what I mean? And a
like
lot of like, especially
bright.
that first part. Yeah, the first part was like brown and gray and like this like bluish tint. When he met Chewbacca, it's like all smoky and gray, and then they go to this planet and it's just like brown and yeah. I don't for like something like the Mandalorian, I can understand that because it's like it's supposed to be like this gritty, and I think they're trying to go for this space western kind of thing with this movie, but I still feel like it should have been more vibrant. Like there was plenty of cowboy movies that were like fucking like vibrant, you know, like
Yeah, I don't know. I think a big part of it is like I don't even know if it's so much like I feel like when you watch certain movies, you know what era they're from.
mhm,
Like if you see an early 2000s movie, you can kind of tell just by the CGI and the way that things are shot. You can
yeah,
tell how a late 2000s movie is. And I think now it's like it all looks like the same Hollywood polished bullshit.
yeah, yeah,
But the thing that I always appreciated about at least Star Wars, like the original trilogy, it does not look like anything in that time era.
mhm,
It sets itself apart. And I remember my friend Blake, he did a rendering of that opening stormtrooper scene in The Force Awakens if they were to use the lighting that they did for A New Hope.
mhm,
And it looks so much better because it looks more organic and more like Star Wars. I
yeah.
think the issue it falls in is like they're kind of like trying to fit in with this era of filmmaking.
But industry standard.
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't necessarily make it a better film. I think The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi they're shot beautifully. I think and even Solo, but like you said, the colors, eh,
Mhm.
and I kind of get what you're saying. I think it would have been interesting to have it start off gritty. So I will argue a bit on that. Like I don't mind the smokiness of that scene because of where they're at. But I feel like as they're kind of leveling up in the movie, going to these different places, I feel like it would be nice to see a little more vibrancy.
See,
Especially
I,
where Dryden Voss was hanging out. Like I would have expected that place to be like
there's a fucking party going on, man. Like you need like say what you will about Canto Bight, but it had some vibrancy to it at least. Like fuck, but like um, and it's funny to me because it's Disney, right? And they actually, because I watched a video on this. I had just recently seen this movie Treasure Planet, which came out in like 2000,
it's my
and
one of my favorite underrated Disney films of all
yeah,
time.
and like Disney understands this because the way they use the color palette in that movie is exactly what they should have done for this. Like the kid starts off wearing like browns and blacks and all that stuff. and he like slowly transitions, like the movie itself slowly transitions between like this like drab kind of like he's a lowly like street rat kind of person to like more vibrant, like brighter like colors and all this shit. And it's like they could have done that with this movie, you know what I mean? Honestly, they talked about a solo movie, and I feel like that's one of the first movies I thought about when they talked about it. I was like, oh man, because I mean, you think about Han Solo, he is kind of like a space pirate, space scoundrel, like cowboy, whatever. And it's like it could have been, I feel like similar in a way to like Treasure Planet, but they obviously wouldn't follow that formula. And that's one of the other things that kind of bothers me about this movie. So at the beginning, like I said, the chase scene was cool. They had that train scene and everything. But the thing is, they're all like rehashed things from other movies that we've seen for like years, just with like Star Wars. Like there's a chase scene, you have to get away from them, so you go between like some place that they can't get to, that kind of shit. There's a train and the tracks are someone's gonna have the tracks is gonna like fall or whatever, and you had to get whatever you need to get before the train, fucking crashes or blows up or whatever. And it's like these are things we've seen. So it's like I think that's the other thing which made it kind of like, okay to me. I'm like, you basically just took like many other stories and just put them like into Star Wars, pretty much. And it's like it's fine if it's like done differently enough to where it's like great, but it wasn't great. So that's the only thing.
Yeah, like that train scene, it reminded me of one of the Fast and the Furious movies where they're breaking apart, like they're taking off like the gas tank trucks,
Yeah, yeah,
making them like that's what it reminded me of. Like this feels like Fast and the Furious and Star Wars. Like
yeah.
it seemed a little weird. And here's the other thing that I know we're really harping on the movie, but I will say, all things considered, knowing that this film was nearly complete with Lord and Miller at the helm of it, and then they switched directors and had to fucking like do a total retool and rehaul.
Yeah.
I will say, for knowing that fact alone, I know that this film would have been probably a lot better had they just let Lord and Miller do their shit
Mm-hmm.
or had Ron Howard on from the beginning. So I will say that. I'm not going to say Solo is a complete waste because it had a lot going against it. It was coming off of the coattails of Last Jedi, which I
And,
fucking
and
don't.
Avengers, right? Avengers is just coming up, I think.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Avengers came out like and the studio competed with itself. It's one of the stupidest fucking moves you could do. And it's like, yes, they didn't know that Last Jedi would be kind of a disappointment in the fan department. I get that. However, it is a good idea to give yourself some space, especially from one of your big tentpole movies, Avengers, Infinity War, and Solo.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too that I learned about, Target and a lot of retailers were mandated by Disney to not allow Solo merchandise in place of Avengers Infinity War. So Avengers Infinity War merchandise took precedent over Solo merchandise, which is why a lot of it really wasn't available until Solo kind of came out. So there wasn't any hype or build up to it already.
I mean,
So it had a lot going against it, which
in,
sucks.
in hindsight, wasn't a terrible idea by them because Solo didn't do great for a Star Wars movie. So Avengers definitely did very good, but you know, I agree that it's so weird to me that they would put those all so close together. And just like, yeah, I mean, it's Solo. Obviously, people love Han Solo, but it's still just like it's not a main Star Wars movie, and you're gonna put that not only near another main Star Wars movie, but near Avengers. So it's competing with those, and it's like obviously more people are gonna go back to see the main Star Wars movie and Avengers rather than go watch this one. And yeah, it was a strange choice.
And Solo is, I think, the only Star Wars movie that's ever lost money
Hmm.
because the budget is roughly estimated to be 275 to 300 mil. It only made 393, and yes, it lost money
Yeah,
because the budget for the movie is only 300 mil. That doesn't count all the marketing and other shit that they have to go into it.
yeah,
And marketing is expensive as fuck. They lost money on Solo. That is no bueno.
yeah.
And like we said, it had a lot going against it already, but the fact that it is a very lukewarm Star Wars movie doesn't help. If it didn't have everything going against it, I think it might have made 5 to 6. But I don't see this movie ever making a bill, not even close. And to sink that much money, especially into a side character film, I don't know if that's because they switched directors and had to reshoot. Maybe it was initially planned to have a smaller budget and that's why it was upped.
Hmm.
But
I mean, they did switch to Ron Howard. He usually does like some pretty, they still technically impressive things and whatnot. So could have to do with it maybe.
I don't know. And I don't give honestly, I give Ron Howard a lot of props for doing what he could for this film because I mean he didn't have any say in writing this thing. The other disappointment with this one too is that as far as the writing goes on some of it, it was written by Larry Kasdan or Lawrence Kasdan and his son John Kasdan.
Hmm.
Lawrence Kasdan only said that he would help write Force Awakens if he could write Solo because he really wanted to write the character of Han Solo. But I feel like there is him in this movie and the moments that I like he wrote. But I feel like a lot of the script is his son and his son's writing.
Hmm.
I can't stand. And then I've seen John Kasdan, his son, defend some of the choices he's made. And you know what? I get as an artist, you want to defend yourself, but it's like some of the stuff he defends is fucking stupid.
Hmm.
Like he's defended the whole, like saying people that don't like the whole robosexual love because it's intended for it to be like Lando is pansexual. I don't have any issue by any means with people wanting to conduct their lives they want to. I think you have every right to do so in any way, shape, or form. But to take an iconic character like Lando and then all of a sudden just make him that, it
Yeah.
seems absolutely stupid.
It's just that it's out of place. It's like if a character's not already that, like there's no reason. And like, yeah, it's not really explained, but it's never really shown either. Not in like comics or movies or anything. So it's like there's no reason for it. They could have honestly instead of L3, they could have just had a character who was who was that. You know what I mean? Like they could have just made another character who was that. But it's just me. I will say something else. Yeah, well, you're talking about the writing, right? And like there were times where, and I mean, the actor kind of he does what he can. And I will say, upon rewatching it, I think that he did get down Han's voice pretty well, like as much as he could. Like I said, the way he looks is still throws me off because I don't think he honestly looks that much like Han. Like I guess he kind of can, but I feel like he's a little shorter and like all that stuff. And it's like throws me off a little bit. But he got mannerisms down pretty well, like the way that Han will like just lean into the doorway or whatever as he's like talking to somebody. But there are definitely certain moments where I'm like, I feel like Han wouldn't react that way. But you could also put it down to this is younger Han, so maybe he's not quite as cocky, not quite as. But there were times where they did make him like that. So then it's like, okay, why wasn't he doing that more? But I guess throughout the movie, it's kind of they're trying to say like, oh, he's trying to become this, but like there was a scene with it was with when Dryden was when he first meets Dryden after seeing Kira again. at that party, and Dryden's basically just like sitting there like, "Oh, you're from Corellia, that piece of shit. That's a dirty ass place, isn't it, Kira?" And she's like sitting there laughing, and Han's just kind of sitting there like with this like he's about to cry or something. He's just like upset, like, "How dare you?" And I'm just like, Han wouldn't react like that. He would have like said something like sarcastic or something. Like I understand he's in a situation where it's like, "Oh, this dude's like a big gangster," but I feel like Han wouldn't just let that shit slide and just sit there being like, "How dare you make fun of Corellia?" you know?
I don't know. Like, I get what you're saying, but I also feel like I get why he probably would have held back in that because, you know, he did just disappoint Beckett and that lady died. And so I feel like maybe he was smart enough in that moment just to shut the fuck up.
Mhm. Well, okay, so I can understand him like shutting up. I think it was just the face. I feel like at that time, even if it was upsetting him, I feel like Han would still try to play it cool. You know what I mean? He would
Yeah.
sit there and like laugh too, or like do this like sarcastic. Yeah, like just kind of that. I think that's what I was expecting, but he kind of like just had that kind of like I'm pissed off face. And I feel like Han doesn't really show that. If he is pissed off, he's not gonna just show it like that. You know what I mean? Uh, yeah, like I said, it could just be because he was that younger Han. But like I said, throughout the movie, they showed times where he was still like the cocky Han that we know. So
Yeah, it's just, I think the best way I've heard it explained is that Solo is an artist's interpretation of who Han Solo is. It isn't truly Solo. And that's kind of how I feel about it in general. Um, I think Chewbacca by Jonas Sotomo, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
mhm.
I love that his body language and stuff, it does feel very much like Chewie, and I love how much he's embraced that character.
Yeah,
And Peter Mayhew, may he rest in peace, had to kind of, hand over the mantle with his medical issues and then unfortunately his passing. Like, I felt at least Chewbacca's essence, and I think even the two of them, like, hanging out, like, I think their interactions, it was one of the things I really liked about it.
yeah,
So I think having Chewie there to play off of, I think really brings out the best in Han. With him as himself and other people, it's really, I don't feel it as much. But I feel like when you are, Alden Ehrenreich and you have Chewbacca there, I think you can't almost help but be Han Solo and try to be.
yeah, yeah,
So I feel like if they were to ever do something in the future, I definitely think it should be based on around those two. And
definitely.
before we go into the good stuff, the one thing I really gotta like hone in on, I like the Spice Mines of Kessel. I think like they did it pretty well, and it kind of was the slave labor camp that I was expecting. I just kind of wish. This sounds terrible, but I kind of wish you would have seen how like brutal it was because I don't think
Oh
we
yeah,
get the full effect of it. But some of those Wookiees looked like absolute fucking garbage. And I get that there's probably ugly Wookiees out in the galaxy. I'm
uh,
sure some of them need a facelift, but some of those things look like cheap ass Planet of the Apes, like
oh my God, thank you.
costumes. And
Wow,
I'm just like,
I'm
who
so glad
the
you fucking
fuck
said that.
approved this design?
That was the last thing I was gonna say. I was like, bro, I rewatched that and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with that Wookiee, dude? I didn't remember that, and it was like it wasn't just one. I was like, oh, maybe it's just that one, but it was like literally all the ones that were there. And I'm like, why the fuck does Chewbacca look completely different than these things? But they're apparently supposed to be Wookiees, I guess. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I saw them. I'm like, they look like fucking extras from Planet of the Apes. Like, why? Who did they shave their faces? Like, I don't understand. Like, why did somebody make this choice? Like, I didn't get it. And I'm like, yeah,
They
that
got
that
mountain person can't grow fur around their mouth.
yeah, I was like, it's some other like different like species of Wookiee on a different planet or something. Like, are they close relatives? And they're speaking like the same language. So I was like, okay. But yeah, I didn't get that. Like literally all of them had that weird like hairless face thing going on. I'm just like, who made that choice? I don't get that. But
Because I mean, we saw other Wookiees in Revenge of the Sith, and
yeah,
it's
but
not
like
like they all look like him, but they have a certain aesthetic quality to them.
yeah,
And
I'm
it's
like,
like, did you guys just not want to put in the time to like make the masks really nice?
is it because they were in prison for so long? Like I just yeah, it's so confusing. I'm like, why would their hair fall out because of that? Like I don't know.
And then I don't even really know what the fuck happened to them. Because
No.
like they broke out, but
Yeah, then there when you know fucking Lando saved the robot or whatever. The other Wookiee was like, "Ah," or whatever. I can't make Wookiee sounds. It's fucking terrible. But yeah, he basically told like Chewbacca, "Hey, I'm getting the fuck out of here, dog. You want to come? Let's get out of here." And Wookiee, he was like, "Nah, man. I know this fucking Han guy. I gotta stay with him." He's like, "All right." And then they just bounced, and that was pretty much it.
that's one thing where I've been kind of disappointed in that movie, and then also in the Rise of Skywalker is that I think it's canon that Chewie does have a family.
Mhm.
The books, I know that it's in canon books that are new. It's described that he's spent time with them or whatever. I kind of wish that we would have had a moment where maybe he did was able to free like his family members,
Yeah.
and maybe just a small exchange like, I came here to free you, go back home to Kashyyyk. And even if it was in, Shriwook, whatever the Wookiee language is, having those conversations in alien voices would have been cool to me. Or in The Rise of Skywalker, to me, a good closing would have been to see the characters break off into their. I know we're talking about Solo, but to break off into their various things and have Chewbacca return home to his family like the war is over. I can
Yeah.
finally retire. My life debt to Han has been paid off. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing too in the movie is that so life the it's kind of explained a little bit in Phantom Menace what a life debt in the Star Wars galaxy, how
Mhm.
Qui-Gon saved Jar Jar, and then Han saved Chewie. That is why Chewie has been his best friend and by his side all that time. It's implied that's why he's there, but it would have been nice to have a little closer of a conversation between the two, or just a little dialogue like,
Mhm.
oh, he said, he'll stay with me, or he'll stay by my side because I saved him. Like, there's certain things like that where it's like, to me, that's more important to explain than certain other elements of what they gave us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like we talked about with the dice thing and like things like that, where it's like I would have actually kind of liked to know more about that or about Chewie, and they kind of did with Chewie what I think they should have done with Kira. Honestly, just kind of like put Chewie in there, and then he was like there. But I mean, it's fine. Um, yeah, we'll say that I remember in Knights of the Old Republic, they do talk about the life that's in pretty good detail because there's a Wookiee character in that game, and that's how kind of how I actually understood them, like the life debts and everything, because they explain it like in pretty good detail. And when you talk to the Wookiee, it like gives you subtitles and shit, so that's always nice. But yeah, they explain it in there, and that's how I kind of got it. And I'm like, okay, that's why. But obviously, yeah, somebody like Chewbacca, he he has a life debt, sure, but he sticks around with Han because he actually really good friends with him. And I wouldn't even doubt, honestly, if in between uh, Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, if they have gone back to like Chewie's family, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Because obviously Han didn't stay with Leia, and they just kept going on adventures and shit. So I would assume they did do that. And damn, after Last Jedi, was Chewbacca like 250 or something? Like he's old shit.
Yes. I think Wookiee lifespans, I want to say, is like 400 years old. And in one of the books, as a side note, I think it's in, I want to say Star Wars Bloodline, where Leia mentions that Chewie is home with his family, like chilling while Han is like space racing with his team or something. So it's like it would have been nice to actually see a family for him in
Mhm.
some capacity at some point. And I know that, screen time, you know, it- I know it has to be delegated for certain things, but I feel like one of the characters that you could have spent some time with would have been him.
Yeah.
Feel like we owe it just to, give us that little look at like, you know, I want to see. It's cool that I know it was kind of a fan servicey thing that like, he got Han's medal from Maz. Like that was nice, but it's like I wish I would have been able to see him go home.
Hmm. No, they totally could have ended it like that. I feel you. Like the last movie. I know we're talking about Solo, but that's a good point. They could have, because I mean, Revenge of the Sith did it, and I feel like that would have been a good way to kind of end that one. Is kind of show where everybody's kind of leaving off now. They showed Ray, but it's like just fuck everybody else, you know. And obviously they killed Ben, so you couldn't really see that. But yeah, no, I get you on that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like, and it would have been because like here's the thing, so the ending of Solo really, and I think we can start. I mean, is there any other bad stuff you want to talk about? Because I think we covered it.
the last thing I want to talk about was the Wookiee faces. So
Oh, and a little extra on that. There isn't a whole lot of designs from this film where like they capture me. Like I
mhm.
will ask this, and you can say whether this is good or bad. Like the stormtrooper designs for me on this one weren't the greatest, so I'm kind of like about it. Um,
To be honest, I don't even really remember them, which tells me that they didn't stick out too much.
there was the regular ones, and then there was the new edition. I think of there was the one on the speeder, which has a slight modification to him. Oh, the mud troopers.
Hmm.
I thought those were kind of cool in like a reminiscent of like World War II
Yeah,
kind of feel. I kind of like those, but the range troopers I think were like the newer ones where it's like the white coat with like these orange like motorcycle looking glasses. I thought were kind of funky looking and not really all that practical compared to a normal traditional snow trooper. So I was
yeah.
like, um, but what did you think of the Falcon? Like the
Um,
original version of it? Like,
I mean, I will say that that is actually one of the things I was gonna say in good.
yeah,
I liked seeing what the Falcon looked like before it got old and fucked up, obviously by Hub, because I think it makes sense. Like obviously, Lando's this guy who has these fancy capes. He lives in like Cloud City, later on, and you can tell that he's a fan of the finer things and all that. So obviously, he's going to keep his ship clean. He has the closet full of capes, which I thought was fucking hilarious. And yeah, obviously, he's going to keep his ship clean and everything. So that I did like that. It was interesting seeing like the Falcon like new and clean. Well, at least until the end, pretty much. But yeah.
yeah. And I will say it is. I did like because I was wondering like how the fuck are they gonna get rid of that front piece? Like what is that thing? And it was interesting to know that it was an escape pod. But I will say the thing that makes me feel a little bit weird about it is like if that is true, why didn't Han ever replace that considering the business he's in? It's like wouldn't it kind of make sense to have an escape pod?
Maybe, although I could see Han being the one where he.
Get
Han,
out of the ship.
yeah, well, he's a scoundrel, right? So he's kind of like, ah, man, do I really want to pay for that though? I don't know. Or he's the type who would be like, you know what? Nobody's ever gonna fucking catch me, so I don't need it. you know. So then he's not gonna spend money on it. He's like, nobody's gonna catch me. It's whatever. Like I could see him doing that, or maybe he modifies the ship so that it doesn't need it or something. I don't know. But I could see Han being honestly cocky enough where he'd be like, I don't need an escape pod. Nobody's gonna catch me in this. It's the fastest ship in the galaxy.
Yeah, all right. I'll give you that one.
I'm
Yeah,
just
I
and
do
he wasn't
like
wrong.
how fucked up it got though.
He wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
Has anybody caught him yet? Well, I guess the tractor beam, but other than that,
But and I like how like it's the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. It's like she may not look like much, but she'll make past point 0.5, and it's like, you know, it getting that jacked up, like I really loved how fucked up it looked after they went through everything. Like I thought it looked super cool.
yeah. I like that part because I'm like, okay, so this is like the beginning of this thing being an actual hunk of junk. Uh, yeah, no, I did like that a lot. Um, and then something else that I did like was Dryden Voss. I like the character, and I
Yeah,
like I like Paul Bettany. Is that his name? Yeah,
yeah,
I like him a lot. Like in almost everything he's been in, I just think he's a good actor. And he did a lot of like more character actor stuff before, where he like you couldn't even like tell it was him. He always had like this crazy ass shit going on. But he's just always good in Marvel, whatever he's in. Like, he's good, and I thought Dryden Boss was he's a cool bad guy. I like bad guys that are kind of like eccentric or whatever,
yeah.
but then they have this kind of weird like almost like psych like psychopath kind of thing going on. This is like, oh, he's being so cordial and so uh inviting, but then at the same time he's like, but if you don't get it, just know you're gonna die. Like, yeah, I like that. So, and that his little weapons were really cool too. Those little, I don't really know what those were. I feel like they were kind of in a way sort of similar to lightsabers almost, but like not really. It was like tiny little, like, I don't know, maybe like light daggers almost.
Yeah, I
Or-
don't know what they're called. I think they talk about it in the solo like reference book, but
hmm,
yeah, I really did enjoy his character for all the same reasons you said. It's like this creepy, eccentric person, but you can tell that he means business the way that he talks and acts. And
mhm,
I would love to see him come back in some capacity because to see how his mind works. But
hmm. Well, they showed them in Clone Wars for like a second during those last few episodes.
oh yeah, that's true. But then
So
again, I guess we wouldn't see him though if they were to do a solo series, huh?
not in the solo series, but if they did like,
The
mm,
beginning of Crimson Dawn, maybe.
he could be in the Bad Batch. You never know, because obviously at the end of Clone Wars, Darth Maul was telling all the crime syndicate bosses to go into hiding and whatnot, because he's the leader of Crimson Dawn, and obviously they talked about Maul might be in Bad Batch, which means we might get Crimson Dawn in there. We might get in some other series that's coming out, these other ones, so we could see him again. It's possible.
Hmm.
Maybe Kenobi series. Well, maybe not because it's only like 4 episodes, so maybe not.
Yeah. The other thing too that I thought it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's more of just kind of a general critique is that there are characters in the movie that I like. Like I really liked Rio, the one that John Favreau voiced.
Hmm.
Um, I thought he was pretty cool. It just sucked that he was just so short-lived in the film and that whole crew.
Same thing with the one played by Thandie Newton, who was basically with Woody Harrelson's character, Beckett.
Yeah,
Because I like Thandie Newton as an actress, like in pretty much most things that she's been in.
yeah. But it's like she just died off so quickly.
Yeah,
And
they don't really give you a chance to really like those characters, you know. So it's like, okay,
yeah, like I liked Rio, and I really did feel sad when he died. Um, Val, I was kind of like, okay, I guess that's kind of sad, but I think it's just because of how happy and like playful Rio was.
Yeah.
Is and just one of my favorites, like they were being like taking a nap in a Wookiee's lap, and it was like,
Mm.
especially Bill Rat. It's like I love Jon Favreau as a voice actor, and I think he did that character justice by far. But yeah, it's kind of like a Rogue One situation where it's like I like the characters, but it's like didn't get enough time to spend with them, especially that movie. It's like they just got killed off really quickly.
Unfortunately, you know what's going to happen to him. So, um, yeah, no, I totally agree though. Wish we would have more time with some of those characters. I honestly feel like they didn't need to die at that moment. Like I kind of get why they did because they needed more of a thing with just like Beckett and Solo, like kind of doing their thing. But I feel like they could have honestly kept going too. I will say I do like those Marauders who ended up being like rebels or whatever. I like their look, and I actually like that their leader was like just like some like young girl. Like that
Yeah,
was honestly like a good surprise. I remember
yeah,
the first time I watched it, I thought she was gonna be like Beckett's daughter. So I'm like, oh my god, to him and like Danny Newton's character Val, did they have like a daughter? Like what's going on? But no, she wasn't. I thought that was interesting that it ended up being. And then like, oh, we're like rebels, and one of them was Warwick Davis.
yeah. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I love him, man. And I was like, oh yeah, Warwick Davis is in this, man. Yeah, he's great. But yeah, they were pretty good characters. I like when there's kind of like a separate, kind of lesser threat in a movie.
Yeah,
Like they were, there wasn't too much of them. Like there was a train, obviously, and like a few other things. But it's like at least there was more of them than like the Knights of Ren or something. There's more of them than that, at least. But yeah, it was good to actually see them do something. And even when the girl was fighting, like
yeah,
it's fucking good. Like she was badass. She had that fucking staff and like cause like shockwaves and shit. I'm like, oh, that's cool as fuck.
yeah. It's like the thing that's kind of cool, and it is a nice aside, like to go off what you're saying is like you start seeing like a little bit of the rebellion at that point, like starting up, like there's little pockets of it. So to me, that's kind of cool to see that, there are these little cells here and there that are doing, I mean, obviously, even in Rogue One, you'd feel it as like illegitimate, like what would be considered illegal things in order to
Yeah.
fight for a better chance. And I did like the fact that it wasn't so much a villain and it was a good person, which is kind of cool.
Hmm.
And that she was willing to, like talk to them and not necessarily fight it out, which was another interesting thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree on that. It was honestly a good little surprise. I was like, it's actually pretty cool. Something else I did like, and we kind of talked about this before, and I wish we would have got like a little bit more of it, especially where this movie was set, like the time that it was set.
Yeah,
And that's the one good thing I think came out of like the beginning part was after Han Solo enlisted with the Empire,
yeah,
kind of seeing like, oh well, there's these people fighting for the Empire. They're not necessarily like they're not bad people, but they're fighting for the Empire, you know. And I thought that was interesting to see, And we talked about it before, where like it'd be interesting to get things about like people who they basically had to do things to survive or to make money or whatever, or feed their family or whatever. So they're obviously gonna like, well, who are the people in power? We got to do things under them, and obviously he gets in trouble later. But yeah, they uh, I like that they have those small little things in there. But I'd like to see more about. I mean, obviously it's a movie. It's already 2 hours, so you can't really put that much in there. But it'd
yeah.
be interesting to see more about what people have to do during this time where like, oh, this empire is in power. Like, what do we have to do to get around this or do that? Yeah.
And that's why I'm writing a short story about it. But I'm not trying to plug anything, people. You probably never watch it anyway. But yeah, I'm kind of curious of what you think about. I like the portrayal of Woody Harrelson as Beckett
Mhm.
because I think he gives a little bit of humor to it. Like one of my favorite Star Wars quotes of all time now is like, "Come on, Chewie, we need a little bit of that Wookiee oomph." That's one of my favorite quotes of all time now.
I,
Like I love that quote.
I like Beckett. Like Woody Harrelson's another, but honestly, this movie had a lot of good actors. Like
But
especially the ones that are already established. There are actors that I already like really like, you know. And like you said, with the situation they were in, they kind of did the best they could with it. And there are genuine moments, like you said, you led that line, and just like there are genuine moments where I just really enjoyed what they were doing. But then, yeah, the next thing it would be kind of like a real low. But for the most part, yeah, I really like Beckett's character. I think it was a good way to show, like, just like the very beginning when they're fighting in the war and everything, and Han's kind of like, he's obviously hasn't done this before, and he's just kind of like, oh god, like what do I do? And then fucking Beckett comes out, and he's like, spinning his like fucking blasters around and doing all this like cool shit, and Han's like, oh shit, I want to be like that. And obviously we know that Han is gonna be like that, so you're like, it's kind of cool to see. And I
yeah,
like that Beckett was kind of, and that even adds even more to what you were saying before, as far as like Kira, where Beckett betrays him at the end, and that adds even more to why Han's like, I'm not gonna trust anybody, like, because he's been shown now multiple times that he shouldn't trust people that are close to him, like even people that are close to him. So, yeah, because he basically treated him like a father for a lot of that movie, and then he just betrays him at the end. So, yeah.
yeah. Now I've heard two different arguments as far as this goes, and I'm kind of curious of what you think about it. For me, I saw that whole Beckett betrayal thing a mile a fucking way. Like I knew that was gonna happen. However, the argument made that I've heard people defend, and I can see it, but it still is like, okay, is the whole thing where like, oh yeah, we see it, but Han doesn't see it, and that's what makes it a good moment.
It's
Where do you stand on that?
so I'm gonna bring up Treasure Planet again because we know that Long John Silver is going to betray. Um, I can't remember the name, the kid. We know he's gonna betray him, but he doesn't know it,
Yeah.
you know, because he sees him as a father figure. That's the thing. So like he's not. I mean, Beckett straight told him like, "Oh, you don't trust anybody." So it's like he should have seen it coming, yeah. But yeah, I kind of see it like that story where it's like, yeah, obviously this person is a scoundrel, they're a thief, all this shit. You shouldn't trust them. But because he's been like, training with him and teaching him this whole time, and they've been going on this huge fucking adventure, like they could have like died multiple times. So it's like at the point you're kind of like, oh well, this is somebody I think I can trust, so it should be fine, right? But then, yeah, he's gonna fall back to what he always does, which is take care of himself. That's what Beckett does. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me in that way because I don't think Han, although I will say they kind of ruin that a little bit, that moment a little bit, because Han does see it coming, which kind of makes the end plan a little bit convoluted, honestly, because it's like he brought the coaxium actually up there, and then in anticipation that, oh well, Beckett's probably going to betray me, but then they almost set it up as like he was genuinely like surprised and like felt betrayed and everything. And that's something the movies do sometimes that kind of like just bothers me in general. And it's like I love the oceans movies, but they do that a lot. I think it's just like a heist movie thing, but it's just like, oh, well, we did this whole convoluted plan because we knew that you were going to do this, and we anticipated that, and we already had this planned, and it's just like, okay. which is fine. That's another thing that where I'm talking about. They just kind of borrow things from other like established things that we've seen already. So now you have like cowboy westerns, you have Fast and Furious, you have like fucking Ocean's 11. It's just like okay,
Yeah, I that's the thing is like kind of how we were saying or you were saying it's like I like how Star Wars, I mean, it definitely and George Lucas did it very well where he did borrow from like old type of fairy tale fantasy type storytelling, but he did it with his own unique twist like Princess Leia is like a damsel in distress or whatever, but then she takes over her own rescue because Han and Luke can't get their shit together.
yeah,
Like that was revolutionary for that point in time, and I still love it. Um, but yeah, the one thing I could argue though is that I think in Han's head, it's like he has this backup plan anticipating the betrayal, but I think it's still as sad and hurtful because he's wishing that the betrayal wouldn't have happened, or maybe he's still holding out a little bit of hope, but he's prepared to ice him if.
yeah.
And I will say, as much as it could be argued that it's like it's definitely on the nose, I did love and enjoy the fact that Han shot first,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and that it wasn't. I mean, definitely, I'm sure that it was probably planned, and because it was definitely a fan service moment. But the way that it was executed, I enjoyed it. It wasn't like the 12 parsec thing where it's like he had to say it or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, I'm glad that he just did it, looked cool while doing it, and
Show,
that was
show, don't tell. But yeah,
yeah,
uh, yeah, you know, and sorry, because yeah, that moment is like it's one of those things where like that's genuinely great, where they just show us and we understand, and it's something like the films do, where it's like you don't need to explain to us about the Kessel Run. We know that he just came from Kessel, and that's probably what happened. And maybe later on in the movie, when he's on the planet where he sees Lando again or something, maybe they're like, "Oh, oh, that's Han Solo. Yeah, he's one who did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, right?" They could have like somebody in the background like just talking about it or something, maybe like whispering about it. But they didn't need to have like this like look at camera. Whoa, I just did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Like we don't need that. But yeah, there's like that's what I'm saying. There's like genuinely good moments like that where it's like, thank you, we get that. It was cool to see. Didn't need to explain it to us. Thank you. That's cool. That's cool. Um, I will say, what I was thinking about right now? I feel the same about Kira and Hans, like romance and everything. I feel the same about that as I do about Padme and Anakin in Attack of the Clones. Where throughout the movie, I was I was a bit like I didn't love the characterization of like um I can never think of how to say his name, but the guy who plays Han in this movie,
Alden Aaron, right?
Aaron Wright, yeah. And I didn't love his characterization, especially and you were talking about when he was with Chewie. It's like good, and they have these like really cool moments, like when they get in the cockpit, and he's like, you know the pilot, like all this shit," and he's like, you're 190 years old." Like I love that shit, but yeah, sometimes when he's with with Kira, it's just like I'm not quite getting Han. But I will say at the very end, and it's like Attack of the Clones, where like I was annoyed with those lines throughout
Yeah.
between Anakin and Padme. But at the very end, there was like some really good shit. And like after they killed Voss and they were talking to each other, I honestly like the conversation they had where she's like, "I understand you, Han. You're a good person," and he almost kind of had this like, "I'm not good. What are you talking about?" Because he's just trying so hard to like be like, because that's always the thing about Han is that he is a good guy. He's a good person, but he tries so hard to be like, this scoundrel and like I don't care, but he does. So that moment I genuinely got like Han right there, where he's like a good person. What are you talking about? So I did like that exchange.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. The and the one thing, because we talked about it a little bit last week, is Alden Ehrenreich. the best characterization of that character is like he says he likes when he played Han Solo at the end of the film.
Yeah, you can
Like,
tell.
it's that if it's like that, he definitely wants to go back and play in that spectrum, and it's like then it makes me think it's like, did you not really care for your character leading up to that? And maybe that's why it's not as, like,
Like believable.
exciting. Because it's like hearing him say that, it almost sounds like he didn't like it himself the way that it was.
Mm-hmm. I
And
understand that.
and I don't want Solo 2 to happen, and here's the reason why. It's just kinda like how you were saying that, like, this movie really felt more about, like, showing off new characters more than anything. A great place to do that is in a series, so I'm all up for a solo series because it would kinda be like what they did with, like, the Young Adventures of Indiana Jones, like, doing some
Yeah,
cool stuff. Like, I think it would play good as a series because it's the ending sets itself up to be. Because weren't they talking about Tatooine or whatever? Like, yeah, that's where
sure.
Jabba the Hutt's at, and we
It,
could see some gangster type shit.
and yeah, Han was talking about yeah, taking a job, and then Darth Maul told Kira to come to meet him on Dathomir, which we have not seen Dathomir in live action, have we? So I would very much like to see that. I would love to see that in live action. So,
That's the thing, it's like
although who the fuck is on Dathomir right now at that
so I think it would just probably be him and then whoever he allows to be there, because the Night Sisters are
point?
dead,
The
pretty
girl
sure,
from Jedi Fallen Order, like the it. Like,
if she's around. But, yeah, I that's the thing, is, like, we've heard rumors of a Lando series and then a potential Darth Maul series. I've heard people wanting a Han Solo series, and even Alden Ehrenreich. I mean, even if he knew something, he couldn't say it. All he said in that interview is like, "I've heard things, but nothing's concrete." S- I feel like that gives you a good that they're not looking to probably do anything soon. I feel like if they were doing something, he would probably give an even more vague answer, like, it's a possibility.
and I will say, so upon rewatching, because I remember in one of the early episodes I talked about, because I didn't think that Donald Glover looked like Billy D. Williams' Lando that much, but I will say I know of a lot of people in the movies who had to play. I mean, it was just him and Han really had to play like older characters. He did nail the cooking characterization. Like upon rewatching, I was like, you know what? He did kill that shit. Okay, like he did really good. And that people like Donald Glover, that's why they're talking about this Lando series and like all that's gaining steam. I will say I don't want a Lando series because they're already talking about a solo series, right? And the thing is, I don't. I just I feel like they should be in the same series. You know, I feel like having them separate is too much. It's like when those Marvel Netflix shows came out, and they kind of stretched themselves too thin, and then they tried to do like the Defenders, and it just wasn't good. Like Iron Fist wasn't good, and it's like I'm not saying that Donald Glover. Obviously, you can carry a series like people loved Atlanta and all that shit, but I'm not sure that Lando as a character should do that because I feel like actually no, it's a better example. Sorry, the CW superhero shows. It's like some of them are kind of good, some of them are okay, and they try to like put them together sometimes. But there's like certain things you can't do because they're all in separate series, and it's kind of a problem that Marvel has sometimes, where it's like, okay, we're here in New York. Here's Spider-Man dealing with some shit. Hey, Iron Man, can you come down from your tower right there and come help? You know, it's just like, uh, they I feel like they should be in the same series so that you don't have this problem where it's like, oh well, this is happening in Lando series, and then this is happening in Solo series, but we can't put them together right now because they're kind of like a different situations and like, it just gets kind of weird when you have like all that shit, especially when they're in the same, they'll be in the same timeline at the same time. So it's like they should be in just in the series together. So I hope they don't do them separate. I hope they're all in together. Even like Darth Maul series, if it's in that same time, they should all be in like the same series. It doesn't need to be like a solo series. it could just be like, I don't know, something else that includes all of them. I think that would be the better idea, in my opinion.
I I agree with you, but I also disagree at the same point. But it's hard to pick a side on that because it's like there's so much shit going on where uh, I really love Donald Glover's performance of Lando. And I feel like if you were able to figure out something that was good enough, do a limited series, don't make it multiple seasons, give it maybe 6, 8 episodes,
Yeah,
and then maybe do the same thing for Solo and Chewie, and then have them meet together.
in Crimson Dawn.
Yeah, and I feel like that would be a really good thing. Is like maybe Maul like summons both of them, and they're in competition with one another.
You know, it would actually be interesting, I think, for a Lando series is you don't first off just make it different, like make it as different as possible. I think you have a series about Lando, not necessarily because I mean he's Lando, right?
Yeah,
I think you have a series about him like doing his like Lando escapades, like, oh, this is how Lando picks up his women. This is how Lando fucking makes his money. Like, make shit about that, you know? I think that'd be interesting because obviously the solo series is gonna be more about him like fighting people, like stealing, doing his like scoundrel shit, you know? And then Lando, if they do separate series, I feel like then the Lando series could be something completely different where it's like just giving you this whole different vibe of like he's a hustler, he's a fucking, you know? So I think that could be interesting. But if they do like a, oh well, Lando's also going to be doing like space adventures and fighting people. You can do that sometimes, but I feel like that's not how Lando usually handles his business. I feel like he's a talker more than like, you know. So
yeah. Like I feel like it's more of just slipping in and out of different scenes, getting what he wants.
yeah, you see something where he's like hustling people, talking his way out of situations, like getting in trouble because he slept with some alien dude's wife or something. Like, yeah,
To me, then it's like even that doesn't sound like enough to warrant a series. Like as cool as that character is, I don't see it. Solo and Chewie, like we know that they had a life before, and that there was definitely something going on. With Lando, the only thing I can really is like, how the fuck did he get Cloud City to be like this thing? It's like,
yeah. Well,
but
he'll
be a
probably be about that, and he well, it'll most likely be about how he was able to accumulate this power that he had and whatnot. Which I'm certainly that would be an interesting story. Is like how who did he have to swindle to, you know? Because I think even the short time he was in Rebels, didn't he try to fuck them over?
a bunch of times.
Yeah. So I'm like, I could totally see like you said, I think a limited series would be better, where it's like you get like 6 to 8 episodes about this is how Lando got to this point, guys. Maybe like Solo shows up in there for like a little bit, but I can see more of a limited series of like 30, 40 minute episodes. And it's about Lando kind of finding a way to hustle his way and accumulate and like swindle these people into like getting himself like a city and shit. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss because it's like it's just so much because you know you have three pretty in demand actors, and it's like what do you do with them? And I think all of them are still contracted to do, I think, 2 or 3 more projects a piece. So they
Mm-hmm.
can do them. That doesn't mean that they will do them. So it sucks because I really want to know where they can go. And like, I feel like it would just be too much if you put them all in the same series, unless you treated the series almost like a comic book run where like one episode is featured around these characters and then one episode is featured around another. And then maybe you just call it Scoundrels of the Galaxy or something. Like,
I think they could do some interesting things with all three characters.
it's just really difficult to figure out. And it's like, I feel like they kind of bit off more than they can chew because it's like, oh, now Maul. Like, a show about Maul, I think, would beat out all of those ideas.
For sure. Yeah.
It's like, I'm really curious of what, crazy asshole has been up to.
So maybe even a better way, because you know how people really want, like, people really love the Hulk, right? And they want that, but Disney's not doing that because they know that like the Hulk would kind of, it could overshadow other things that they want to do.
But it's
Like,
also 'cause it's owned by Universal.
yeah, and oh yeah, that's and they kind of so they kind of like work around that by just having Hulk show up and like everything else. Maybe they do that with Darth Maul so that they don't have to worry about that. They're like, oh, he's gonna show up in Lando series, he's gonna show up in Solo series, he's gonna show up in the Ahsoka series, because I mean, Crimson Dawn's always gonna be there until the very end, like what, like Rebels or something. And even then, I think they're probably still around. Just
Because it seems like Maul somehow lost. Like, I don't know if the Emperor must have come to him and, like, your reign, it is at an end.
yeah, maybe.
Like, I wonder what made him from being this total badass to, like, being, it seems like a piss poor old
The
man.
old master, yeah, just skulking around.
It's like, I used to run a crime syndicate, but Kenobi. It's like, all right, I used to run this badass shit. Now I got to go find the person I hate.
Maybe they'll be in the Obi-Wan series. Maybe that's why he really, really wants to kill him in there at the end. He's like, I need to find him because he destroyed my crime syndicate, and I hate him. Maybe that's the Solo series. I mean, maybe that's the Obi-Wan series right there. Who knows?
I'd rather face Vader than face Maul because we already got the Maul thing in Rebels, and
they fought a lot.
As cool as it would be to see that moment live action, like, you don't really need to.
If
there's anything else you can talk about right now? If not, we can just close it out.
I think it's something else that I liked. I mean, yeah, I think that's pretty much it in that movie that I liked. Yeah. Good soundtrack. Star Wars.
You know what's kind of... There's one thing that I have an issue with, kind of, is that, but it's also kind of a nice thing, is that the world in which it is in, it does feel like this very rogue, no pun intended, but like kind of rogue, like lawless kind of world. And I definitely do feel the Star Wars presence and tones to it, but at the same time I kind of don't. So to me it almost feels slightly disconnected to the world that we know, because, like, I mean, we do see stormtroopers in the Empire and stuff, but it really does separate itself so much from it. So sometimes it does feel like I'm kind of being kicked out of that world in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about at the beginning. It's like, yeah, there's Star Wars stuff within it, but it really feels a lot like it's just like a Western or a heist movie or whatever. And then they kind of put some Star Wars stuff in there. And yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, I feel almost when I'm watching it, like, and for a bit, I'm not watching Star Wars at times. And yeah, I mean, it's fine. And like I said about the color palettes and all that, I just feel like they could have been different choices, but I feel like there's enough in there that it's enjoyable at times and you get the Star Wars vibe, but definitely it feels a lot different than a lot of the other movies. And if it would have been a great movie, that would have been perfectly fine, because it's like, it's fine if Star Wars feels different than other Star Wars. You'd rather that. honestly, but it just wasn't a great movie. It was okay. It was decent.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not really a good point because the whole movie didn't give you that lasting effect. You know,
yeah, and
I
it's
feel like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
okay. And I'm just gonna kind of close and say on this, it's like I'm open to the idea of a solo too. I'm open to the idea of it being a series, and I really think that's the way it should go. So it allows itself to breathe and not just kind of give itself like claustrophobic vibes because it just feels like everything needs to fit into this nice little package
Hmm.
because it doesn't feel like a one-off story. Like I feel like you can have some really good adventures with, Chewie and Han and kind of see how their friendship really forms because it's like, we see that Han speaks, you know, Sherwook or however it's pronounced, to Chewie, but then it gets to the point in A New Hope where obviously there's that time difference and they had no idea that this was going to happen, but it's like they just understand each other in a different way and dynamic, and I want to see how that relationship grows. I want to see him deal with Jabba the Hutt because I feel like Jabba the Hutt, in a dark, gritty kind of way,
Hmm.
like really show like what he can do and what he's more capable of. I'd love to see that.
I, I honestly, when they announced the movie, I really assumed that Jabba was going to be in it. Honestly, because
Same.
of how they always talk to each other, in the originals, like obviously you guys have dealt with each other plenty of times, and he's like, when he needed to pay Jabba, he's like, "Come on, Jabba, you know good for it." Yeah. And it's like, oh, they've been through this like so many times, you can tell. And it's like, so I just expected it to be in that movie, and I guess that's the one thing I think that would have helped, honestly, make it feel even more Star Wars. And obviously, they had the thing at the end where it's like, oh yeah, I heard about this gangster we can deal with, like that kind of shit. But it's like, yeah, I really thought Jabba was gonna be in this movie, like that. And that's another thing where I'm like, they use this movie to introduce characters and everything. And as much as I love Maul and the Crimson Dawn, that I mean, until this movie, that really didn't have anything to do with Han, you know?
Yeah, I think it must have been a way to probably try to reintroduce Maul because I feel like they were trying to set up something for Maul to eventually be a part of so they could reuse a really beloved character in something.
Yeah, I honestly expected this movie was going to be like, oh, he takes a job with Jabba, and it's about him trying to like pay him back. And he like barely does, but then he like obviously takes more jobs and keeps having to try and pay him back. But yeah, that's what I expected.
No, only time will tell, my friend. And I think that should wrap us up here today at Jabbering Jawas. It's been your host, Joey Clark, Joey One Kenobi here.
Well, Sith, the throne.
He's like, yep, that name, that shall never be mentioned. If you guys want to follow us, I am at Sinister Wookie on Instagram, at Joey J. Clark on Twitter, and then we're at Jabbering Jawas on Instagram. And then I opened a new Star Wars pin shop with my girlfriend called at Hera's Hideout, like Hera's Syndulla or Syndulla, depending on if you like the Thrawn pronunciation or the Syndulla pronunciation. So at Hera's Hideout if you want to check out some cool Star Wars pins.
Yeah, and I'm at It's Your Boy Will on Twitter. Boy with an I, Will with a one. Sorry again. I'm gonna put all this probably in the bio and everything.
Down
Uh,
here somewhere.
yeah, down there. If you're watching if you're on the podcast and you can't see what the fuck we're doing right now, but
Oh
the
yeah, do an audio version of this too.
yeah, and yeah, I don't really want y'all to follow me on Instagram, but it's Will the Thrill on Instagram, and I got a fucking YouTube. You can follow that, I guess. Just plug everything. Awkward Will Comedy. It's spelled weird. It'll be in the fucking bio, so you'll see.
It's
Yeah,
like my new condom brand. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. I just got to deal with Trojan, so shout outs.
Like,
No.
and my OnlyFans account.
Yeah. Let me not say that. Children's gonna claim the fucking video like everything else gets claimed. But nah. Yeah, thank you all for watching.
And then next week we got Rogue One talk. We do love Rogue One. But, you know, there's issues here and there, so we'll have fun picking it apart. But it does have one of my absolute favorite droids, K2SO, in it, so we'll definitely be talking more Star Wars.
In Star Wars. But yes.
All right. May the Force be with you.
Always.